You can tell a lot about a person by what they do when they think nobody is watching. Adrian Blackwood learned that lesson on a quiet Thursday evening, standing alone in the shadowed hallway of his Chicago estate, watching a woman give away the last thing she had kept for herself. Olivia Carter had spent the entire day moving quietly through the mansion, carrying trays, polishing dark wood, arranging fresh linens, and helping wherever someone needed an extra pair of hands. She was 30 years old, a black woman with deep brown-black skin, a graceful oval face, high cheekbones, dark almond-shaped eyes, and a calm expression that rarely demanded attention. She had never tried to impress Adrian. In fact, she barely spoke to him unless her work required it. That was precisely why he noticed her. Adrian was 43, a white European man, 6 feet 2 inches tall, with broad shoulders, a muscular build, light olive skin, a square jaw, brown eyes, and thick eyebrows. His dark brown hair was slicked back, naturally threaded with about 30% gray, and his short boxed beard carried the same quiet silver. Beneath his tailored black suit and open black shirt, fixed black and gray tattoos covered his neck and upper chest, extending across his hands and fingers in an unchanging pattern. He carried himself with the calm confidence of a man accustomed to being obeyed. But that evening, he was simply watching. In the staff kitchen, Olivia had placed a small dinner plate on the counter. It was the meal she had saved for herself after finishing her shift. Then she noticed Mrs. Wilson, an older employee, sitting alone at a nearby table. The woman looked exhausted. She had been working longer hours lately and had barely touched the food in front of her. Olivia glanced at her own plate, then at Mrs. Wilson. She did not hesitate. She carried the plate across the room and set it gently beside her. "You should eat," Olivia said softly. Mrs. Wilson looked up. "That is yours." Olivia smiled. "I can make something later." She turned away before the older woman could argue. Adrian remained in the hallway, completely still. He had watched people accept his money with gratitude, flatter him for access, and offer kindness when they expected something in return. Olivia had done none of those things. She did not know he was there. She had no reason to perform. She had simply seen someone who needed more than she did and acted. Adrian looked toward the kitchen again. For the first time in years, something about the mansion felt unfamiliar to him. He had always believed kindness was easy when you had enough money to give things away. But Olivia had just given away something she actually needed. And she had done it without asking anyone to notice. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly, not with suspicion, but curiosity. Who was this woman? More importantly, why did she never ask for anything? He had no idea that the answer would eventually change the way he understood power, generosity, and the people who depended on him. For now, he simply stood in the hallway as the kitchen door slowly closed between them. And for the first time, the most powerful man in the house found himself watching someone he could not understand. The next morning, Adrian Blackwood found himself thinking about a dinner plate. It was an absurd thing to occupy the mind of a man who spent his days making decisions involving millions of dollars, but the image would not leave him. Olivia Carter giving away the only meal she had saved for herself had seemed insignificant to everyone else in the household. To Adrian, it had become a question. He arrived at breakfast earlier than usual and noticed Olivia moving quietly through the dining room, arranging coffee, fresh fruit, and warm bread before the household staff arrived. She worked with the same calm rhythm as always, never rushing and never asking for praise. Adrian watched from the doorway for several seconds before speaking. "Olivia." She turned immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood. Did you eat last night?" Her expression changed slightly, as though she already understood why he was asking. "Yes." Adrian looked at her. "You gave your dinner away." Olivia smiled politely. "Mrs. Wilson needed it more." "That was not what I asked." She paused. "I ate later." Adrian studied her face, trying to determine whether she was simply being modest. "You could have told someone you were hungry." Olivia adjusted a tray on the table. "I could have." "Then why did you not?" She looked at him calmly. "Because it was one dinner." Adrian did not answer. To him, one dinner had always been insignificant because he had never needed to wonder where the next one would come from. Olivia seemed to understand something he had never been forced to consider. Small things mattered when you had little room for waste. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit and placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This is for you." Olivia looked at it, but did not touch it. "What is it?" "A bonus." "For what?" "For your work." She gave him a thoughtful look. I am already paid for my work. Adrian almost smiled. You are difficult to thank. I am not trying to be. He pushed the envelope slightly closer. Take it. Olivia shook her head. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood, but I would rather not. Adrian's expression became more serious. Why? Because I do not need it. Most people would disagree. Then perhaps it would help someone who does. Adrian looked at the envelope again. Who? Olivia hesitated before answering. Mrs. Wilson has been helping her grandson with school expenses. She would never ask you herself. Adrian felt something shift inside him. You know that. She mentioned it once. And you decided my money should go to her? Olivia immediately shook her head. No. I only thought you might prefer your generosity to solve a real problem instead of becoming another reward for something I was already supposed to do. Adrian stared at her. There was no arrogance in her voice. No attempt to make him feel guilty. She was simply stating what she believed. He took the envelope back. You really do not want anything? Olivia returned to arranging the table. I want to do my work well. That is all. For today. Adrian stood there longer than necessary. Then he nodded and walked away, carrying the envelope with him. But he did not put it back in his office. Instead, he stopped in the corridor and looked toward the staff wing. For the first time, he wondered how many people around him had needs they were too proud or too afraid to mention. And for the first time, the question was not how much it would cost him to solve them. The question was why he had never thought to ask before. By Friday afternoon, Adrian Blackwood had stopped asking himself whether Olivia Carter was unusually kind and started asking a different question. Was she always like this when nobody was watching? The thought followed him through meetings, phone calls, and the quiet corridors of Blackwood Estate. He had already offered her a bonus. She had refused it without hesitation. She had not even seemed impressed by the fact that he was the one offering it. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Not because he wanted gratitude, but because Adrian was accustomed to understanding people. He could usually tell what someone wanted from a glance, a pause, or the way they chose their words. Olivia gave him nothing to measure. So that afternoon, instead of returning immediately to his study, Adrian walked through the staff wing. He did not announce himself. He simply watched. Near the laundry room, Olivia noticed a young employee struggling to organize several delivery sheets. The woman looked frustrated and embarrassed. Olivia quietly took the papers, sorted them by date, and explained the system without making the mistake seem important. A few minutes later, she was in the kitchen helping another employee prepare a late meal. Then she noticed that one of the newer workers had forgotten her coat in the unheated side entrance. Olivia walked back, found it, and placed it over the chair beside her. None of these actions lasted more than a few minutes. None required money. None earned applause. Adrian remained at a distance, his expression calm but increasingly thoughtful. He began to notice something else. Olivia never behaved differently when senior staff entered the room. She did not become more cheerful around important people or quieter around those with less authority. She treated everyone with the same steady respect. That realization unsettled Adrian because it challenged something he had believed for most of his adult life. He had assumed kindness was often strategic. People gave when they expected something back. They listened when they wanted approval. They smiled when they wanted access. Olivia seemed to operate by a different rule. Later that evening, Adrian found her in the pantry, carefully labeling supplies for the weekend staff. You do a lot, he said. Olivia looked up. There is always something to do. That is not what I meant. She waited. Adrian leaned lightly against the doorway. You help everyone. Olivia considered the statement. Not everyone. Most people. If I can help, I do. Why? She gave a small smile. Because I know what it feels like when nobody does. Adrian's expression changed, but he said nothing. Olivia returned to the shelves. She had answered without drama, yet the words stayed with him. Adrian walked away slowly, carrying another unanswered question. What had happened in her life to make kindness feel necessary instead of optional? That night, he sat alone in his study with the city lights glowing beyond the windows. The envelope he had taken back that morning still rested on his desk. He opened it, looked at the check, and then closed the folder again. He realized he had been studying Olivia because he wanted to understand her. But perhaps the more important discovery was that, while watching her, he had started examining himself. And Adrian Blackwood was beginning to realize that the woman he could not understand might be showing him something he had never learned. By Saturday evening, Adrian Blackwood had reached the point where curiosity was no longer enough. He needed to understand why Olivia Carter carried herself with such quiet generosity, especially when nobody seemed to expect it from her. He found her in the small garden room just beyond the kitchen, where warm light from the wall lamps fell across the polished floor and the rain tapped softly against the tall windows. Olivia was folding clean linens when Adrian entered. She looked up and offered the same respectful smile she always gave him. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. Do you have a minute?" She nodded and placed the linen neatly on the table. Adrian remained standing at first, his tailored black suit perfectly arranged, his dark brown hair slicked back with its natural gray, and his short boxed beard carrying the same silver strands. The black and gray tattoos along his neck and upper chest remained visible beneath his open shirt. His expression was calm and authoritative, but there was less distance in his eyes than before. "I have been wondering about something," he said. "About me?" Olivia asked gently. "About you." She waited. Adrian looked toward the rain-covered windows. "You help people even when it costs you something. You refuse money when you could easily accept it. You never seem interested in recognition. I do not understand it." Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You do not have to understand everything about a person to respect them." Adrian looked back at her. "I know that. Do you?" The question was gentle, not challenging, yet it made him pause. Olivia folded another towel. "When I was younger, my family went through a difficult period. We did not have much. There was a woman in our neighborhood who noticed without making us feel ashamed." Adrian listened carefully. "What did she do?" "Small things. She brought groceries sometimes. She helped my mother find work. Once, when our electricity was nearly shut off, she quietly paid the bill." Olivia smiled at the memory. "My mother wanted to repay her." "Did she?" "She tried." Olivia shook her head. The woman refused. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why?" "She said something I never forgot. She said that help should not become another debt." The room seemed quieter after that. Rain moved softly against the glass. Adrian looked down at his hands, the same hands covered with fixed black and gray tattoos that had become part of his unmistakable appearance. "So you became like her?" he asked. Olivia smiled. "I hope so." "Why?" "Because someone once made my family feel like we still had dignity when we had very little." Adrian absorbed the answer slowly. He had spent years believing that money was the fastest solution to almost every problem. Olivia was describing something money could not automatically provide: the ability to receive help without feeling small. "And that is why you help people?" Adrian asked. "Partly. What is the other part?" Olivia looked at him. "Because once you know what kindness feels like, it becomes difficult to ignore someone else who needs it." Adrian said nothing. For the first time, he understood that Olivia was not trying to change him. She was not trying to impress him, and she certainly was not waiting for a reward. She had simply chosen a way of living and stayed faithful to it. Adrian finally nodded. "Thank you for telling me." Olivia returned his gaze calmly. "You are welcome." He left the room and walked slowly down the hallway. The mansion looked exactly as it always had, but Adrian no longer saw it the same way. He had spent his life believing power meant never needing anyone. Olivia had just shown him another possibility. Perhaps real strength was being able to help someone without making them feel smaller. And that thought stayed with him long after the rain stopped. By Monday morning, Adrian Blackwood had stopped thinking about kindness as a private quality and started wondering what it could look like inside an entire household. Olivia Carter's story had stayed with him through the weekend. The woman who once helped her family had never made them feel like a charity case. She had offered assistance without taking away their dignity. Adrian kept returning to that idea because it exposed a weakness in the way he had always solved problems. When someone needed help, he wrote a check. When a situation became complicated, he gave an order. When a person struggled, he assumed resources could make the difficulty disappear. But Olivia had shown him that help could be offered without making someone feel powerless. That morning, Adrian called his household manager into the study and asked for a complete list of employee concerns that had been raised during the previous 6 months. The manager looked surprised. "Is there a particular issue you want addressed?" Adrian shook his head. "I want to know what we have been missing." The request was simple, but it changed the tone of the meeting. They discussed scheduling difficulties, transportation problems, childcare concerns, and the quiet financial pressures that many employees had. Never brought directly to Adrian. Adrian listened without interrupting. He did not ask who had complained. He asked why people had felt unable to speak earlier. By lunchtime, he had made a decision. The estate would establish a private assistance program for employees facing temporary family or financial difficulties. Requests could be reviewed confidentially, without employees having to stand in front of Adrian and explain personal circumstances. The system would not depend on personal favors, and no one would be expected to earn help through extra loyalty. Adrian wanted the process to be simple, respectful, and consistent. Later that afternoon, he walked through the staff kitchen and found Olivia arranging supplies. She looked up when he entered. "Good afternoon, Mr. Blackwood." Adrian nodded. "I changed something." Olivia waited. "There will be a confidential assistance program for employees who need temporary support." Her expression softened, but she did not immediately congratulate him. "That sounds useful." Adrian almost smiled. "Useful. Very useful." He studied her. "That is all you have to say?" Olivia continued organizing the shelves. "What else should I say? I thought you might ask what made me change it." She glanced at him. "I already know." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "You do? Someone needed help, and you realized the way you were offering it was not always the best way." Her answer caught him off guard. She had understood without needing every detail. Adrian looked around the kitchen. "You did not ask me to do this." "No. You did not even know I was considering it." "No. Then why do I feel like you are somehow responsible?" Olivia smiled. "Maybe because you were listening." Adrian stood quietly for a moment. Those words mattered more than praise would have. He had not simply given money this time. He had changed the structure around the people who worked for him. He had created a way for someone to ask for help without having to surrender pride in exchange for it. Olivia returned to her work, and Adrian walked away. In the hallway, he passed Mrs. Wilson, who was speaking with another employee about the new program. Neither woman noticed him. Adrian slowed for a moment, listening to their relieved voices. Then he continued toward his office. The decision had cost him almost nothing compared with what he owned. Yet somehow, it felt more meaningful than any check he had ever written. For the first time, Adrian was beginning to understand the difference between giving someone something and giving them a way to stand on their own. By Tuesday afternoon, the new assistance program had already begun to change the atmosphere inside Blackwood Estate. But Adrian Blackwood knew that creating a policy was easier than knowing whether people would trust it. He had spent years making decisions from behind polished desks, surrounded by managers who filtered information before it ever reached him. Now he wanted to see what happened when people were given a chance to speak without fear of embarrassment. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Adrian was reviewing paperwork in his study when his household manager quietly mentioned a young employee named Rachel who had requested several schedule changes. She had a 6-year-old daughter and was struggling to arrange reliable after-school care. The request was simple, but the manager sounded uncertain. "She has already missed 2 shifts, he explained. "We may need to reconsider her position." Adrian looked up from the document. Why did she miss them? Her child care arrangement fell through. Adrian was silent for a moment. Did anyone ask what happened? The manager hesitated. Not directly. That answer stayed with Adrian. Instead of making an immediate decision, he asked the manager to invite Rachel to a private meeting. When she arrived, she looked nervous and kept her hands folded in front of her. She expected a warning. Adrian could see it in her expression. "You are not here because you are in trouble," he said. "I want to understand the situation." Rachel explained that her daughter had recently started a new school program. The schedule had changed unexpectedly, and the person who usually picked her up could no longer do it every afternoon. Rachel had tried several alternatives, but each had failed. She had not wanted to ask for special treatment, because she needed the job and feared being seen as unreliable. Adrian listened without interrupting. Then he asked the manager what options were available. They discovered that Rachel could shift some of her hours to begin earlier in the day and take shorter breaks at different times. The arrangement would require planning, but it was possible. Adrian approved it. Rachel looked surprised. "Thank you, sir." Adrian shook his head. "You do not need to thank me for giving you a chance to solve a problem." When she left, Adrian remained seated for several seconds. He had expected the meeting to be about an employee's failure. Instead, he had discovered that the failure had been in the system around her. Later that afternoon, Olivia found him standing near the staff notice board, reading the newly posted information about the assistance program. She stopped a few feet away. "Something wrong?" Adrian looked at her. "Something went right. Olivia smiled. That is good. Adrian told her about Rachel's situation. Olivia listened quietly. You gave her another option, she said. We gave her one, Adrian corrected. The manager helped arrange it. Olivia nodded. That matters. Adrian looked at the notice board again. I almost made the same mistake as before. What mistake? Thinking that helping someone means solving everything for them. Olivia's expression softened. Sometimes helping means giving someone enough room to solve it themselves. Adrian considered those words. That was exactly what had happened. Rachel had not needed someone to take over her life. She had needed a fair chance to manage it. For the first time, Adrian saw the difference between rescue and support. One made a person dependent on the person with power. The other gave them room to remain capable. He looked toward Olivia. You knew this already, did you not? She smiled gently. I have had a lot of practice. Adrian smiled faintly. Then he returned to his study. But this time he did not close the door behind him. He left it open, as if inviting the voices he had spent years keeping outside. By Wednesday evening, Adrian Blackwood began to understand that changing a system was only the first step. The notice about the new assistance program had been posted throughout Blackwood Estate. The managers had received clear instructions, and employees now had a private way to request support. Yet Adrian noticed something that bothered him. Some people still lowered their voices when discussing personal problems. Others avoided the program entirely, as though asking for help remained a sign of weakness. The policy had changed. The habit had not. Adrian discovered this during a quiet meeting with his household managers. How many requests have we received? He asked. The senior manager checked his notes. 3. Adrian frowned. Only 3. Yes. How many employees do we have? The manager gave him the number. Adrian leaned back in his chair. The program was supposed to make support easier, yet the low number suggested that people still did not trust the process. He remembered Rachel sitting across from him the day before, expecting a warning instead of assistance. He understood now that one successful meeting did not erase years of caution. Adrian looked at the managers. I want every supervisor to explain the program personally to their teams. One manager hesitated. Some employees may still prefer not to discuss private matters. They should not have to discuss them publicly, Adrian replied. But they should know the option exists. The meeting continued for another hour. Adrian asked questions he would never have asked months earlier. Did employees know whom to contact? Did supervisors understand what information was confidential? Did people believe requesting help could affect their future at the estate? The answers were uncomfortable. Some managers admitted that employees had previously been discouraged from bringing personal concerns into the workplace, not because anyone had intended harm, but because the old culture valued efficiency over understanding. Adrian sat quietly after hearing that. Then he said, that changes now. His voice remained calm. He did not need to raise it. The decision was clear. The following morning, Adrian personally attended a short staff meeting. Olivia stood near the back of the room, listening with the other employees. Adrian explained the new assistance process himself. He did not make promises that every problem could be solved. He simply said that people should not have to choose between doing their jobs and caring for their families when reasonable solutions existed. When he finished, the room remained quiet. Then Mrs. Wilson slowly raised her hand. Will asking for help affect our standing here? Adrian looked directly at her. No, are you certain? Yes. His answer was simple. If someone needs temporary support, asking for it will not make them less valuable to this household. Olivia watched him carefully. Adrian noticed her expression only for a moment. There was no pride in her face, no sense that she had won an argument. There was only quiet approval. After the meeting, Adrian walked beside her through the corridor. You were right, he said. Olivia looked at him. About what? Changing a rule is not the same as changing the way people think. She smiled. That takes longer. Adrian nodded. I know. They continued walking beneath the warm hallway lights. Adrian had once believed leadership meant giving instructions and expecting results. Now he understood something more difficult. Leadership meant creating an environment where people could trust the decisions being made around them. The policy was only paper. The real change had to live in the way people treated one another. And Adrian Blackwood was finally learning that power mattered most when people no longer had to be afraid of using their own voice. By Thursday evening, Adrian Blackwood had begun to notice something he had never expected to see inside his own estate. People were starting to speak more freely. The change was subtle. An employee would ask a question without rehearsing it first. A supervisor would listen before answering. Someone might mention a family obligation without immediately apologizing for it. None of these moments looked important on their own, but Adrian had learned to pay attention to small things. He had also learned that real change could not be measured by a single policy or one successful meeting. It had to appear in ordinary moments when nobody was thinking about leadership at all. That evening, Adrian found Olivia Carter in the quiet hallway near the staff lounge. She was carrying a stack of freshly folded linens, her posture graceful and composed as always. Her deep brown-black skin looked warm beneath the soft hallway lights, and her natural makeup remained subtle and elegant. Adrian stopped several feet away. "Olivia?" She turned. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood?" He hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming in his mind for days. "What do you want?" Olivia blinked, clearly surprised. "What do I want?" "For yourself." She looked at him for a moment. Adrian expected hesitation, perhaps a request she had been too polite to make before. Instead, she smiled gently. "I am not sure. Think about it." She lowered the linens onto a nearby table. "You have changed a lot of things lately." Adrian gave a quiet nod. "I have." "Why?" "Because I finally realized that people should not have to struggle silently just because they work for me." Olivia studied his expression. "That is a good realization." Adrian looked toward the tall windows at the end of the corridor. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the evening sky. "But you have been helping everyone for a long time. What has anyone ever done for you?" Olivia's expression softened. "People have helped me. And what would you ask for now?" She thought carefully. "If I really needed something?" "Yes." Olivia looked down for a moment before answering. "I think I would want to know that I could ask for help without feeling ashamed." Adrian became completely still. The answer was so simple that it took him a moment to understand its weight. She was not asking for money. She was not asking for a promotion, a larger room, special treatment, or access to anything inside his world. She was asking for something many people never thought to request: permission to be vulnerable without losing dignity. Adrian nodded slowly. "You would have that here." Olivia smiled. "Thank you." "No," Adrian said quietly. "Thank you." She looked surprised. Adrian continued. "You made me realize that people can need help without becoming less capable. I spent years believing that providing everything meant I was doing enough." Olivia listened without interrupting. "Sometimes," she said, "people do not need everything. They just need someone to leave the door open." Adrian looked toward the study at the end of the hall. Its door had remained open since Tuesday. He had not closed it again. He understood now why that small change mattered. He had spent years creating distance between himself and everyone around him. Believing distance was what kept authority intact. Olivia had shown him that distance could also keep a person from seeing what was happening right in front of him. Adrian looked back at her. "If you ever need something, ask." Olivia nodded. "I will." Then she picked up the linens and continued down the hallway. Adrian remained where he was, watching her disappear around the corner. For once, he did not follow. He simply stood in the quiet and understood that the woman who had asked him for nothing had given him something far more difficult to receive: a reason to become the kind of man who could finally be asked for help. By Friday evening, the Blackwood estate felt different, although nothing about its walls had changed. The same polished floors reflected the warm lights. The same tall windows overlooked the city. The same quiet routines continued through the mansion. Yet Adrian Blackwood no longer moved through the house as though it belonged only to him. He noticed the people behind the routines. He noticed when someone looked tired. He noticed when a supervisor listened patiently instead of rushing an answer. He noticed when employees spoke without lowering their voices. Most of all, he noticed Olivia Carter. She was standing in the staff kitchen that evening, finishing her work before the household settled for the night. Her deep brown-black skin glowed naturally beneath the warm lights, her elegant oval face calm and composed, her dark almond-shaped eyes focused on the task in front of her. She had never changed the way she treated people, even as Adrian changed around her. Adrian entered quietly. His tailored black suit was immaculate, his open black shirt revealing part of the fixed black and gray tattoos covering his neck and upper chest. His dark brown hair was slicked back, naturally threaded with gray, and his short boxed beard carried the same silver strands. He stopped near the doorway. Olivia looked up. Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. Good evening. She smiled and returned to her work. Adrian watched her for a moment before speaking. Do you remember the first time I offered you that bonus? Olivia nodded. Yes. You refused it. I did. I thought you were being unusual. Olivia smiled softly. I probably was. Adrian laughed quietly. It was a small sound, but it would have been almost impossible to imagine from him a few weeks earlier. He walked closer, keeping a respectful distance. I have been thinking about what you told me. Olivia looked at him. About helping people without making them feel smaller. Yes. He glanced around the kitchen. I thought I knew what generosity meant. I thought having enough resources meant I could solve almost anything. Olivia waited. Now I understand that sometimes the most important thing is giving someone room to remain themselves. Her expression softened. That is a good lesson. Adrian nodded. You taught it without ever trying to teach me. Olivia looked slightly surprised. I never thought about it that way. That is why it mattered. Silence settled between them. It was not uncomfortable. It felt complete. Adrian looked toward the staff notice board where the assistance program information remained posted. A few weeks earlier, he would never have imagined putting something like that in his household. Now it seemed obvious. He had not become a different man overnight. He still carried the same authority, the same responsibilities, and the same controlled presence. But he had learned to use those things differently. He had learned to listen before deciding. He had learned that asking for help did not make a person weak. He had learned that kindness did not need an audience. Olivia picked up the last folded linen and turned toward the storage room. Adrian stopped her with one quiet sentence. Olivia. She turned. Yes. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Thank you for never asking me to become someone else. Olivia smiled. You became who you wanted to become. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. That was the truth. She had never demanded change. She had simply lived according to her own values, and he had finally chosen to pay attention. Olivia walked away, leaving Adrian alone in the warm kitchen. He stood there quietly, looking at the empty doorway. The most powerful man in the house had once believed that people were measured by what they could offer him. Now he understood that a person's worth could not be calculated that way. Olivia had never asked for anything, yet her kindness had changed the way he saw everyone around him, including himself. And that evening, Adrian finally understood what real dignity looked like. Not power over others, but the strength to use power without taking dignity away.